Hello, in today's video we are going to build a PC from scratch and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So let's get on with it. Roll titles! So you might have seen my earlier videos, I unboxed a Sahara P75 white gaming case and also a Sahara Gaming EX360 AIO CPU cooler. Well, you might have guessed, but the nice people at Sahara Gaming sent me those items and I thought, well, it seems daft having a new case and a new cooler and not really doing much with them, so I built my new PC around them. So in this video I'll be showing you step by step how I did that, and if you want to have a go at building your own PC, hopefully there's enough information in the video to help you do that. I've tried to show everything as best I can and I think it's turned out okay. I did do a video last year or the year before where I built a PC and that was the very first time I'd done anything like that, and some people seem to love it. Some people seem to hate it, but hopefully this will make up for that video, and I think I've improved where I went wrong in that old one. And if you don't want to watch the whole video in its entirety, I have put the chapter markers in the description so you can just skip to the bit that interests you rather than having to watch the whole thing. But hopefully you want to watch the whole thing, it's actually quite good. So let's go over to the table and build a PC. So the heart of any PC build is the motherboard, and in this case, I've gone for the Asus ROG Strix B450F gaming motherboard, and here it is. Now, I've chosen this one basically because it's got a lot of expansion options. We've got three PCIe Express 16 slots there. We've got three of the PCI Xe slots here, and yeah, it's got two RGB connectors. It's got plenty of fan connectors. It's got lots of SATA connectors, so it does what I want it to do. Now, we do need to do a little bit of work on the motherboard before it gets to the case. What do we need to do? Well, because we're not using a stock cooler, we're using an AIO, we need to remove this so we can get the mount in for the AIO in. So that's probably one of the first jobs. And then once we've done that, we can put the processor in here, and then we can put the memory in here, and then we can install the M.2 drive here. I think that's the right one. There is another slot for one there. So yeah, before we get into the case, there's plenty to do. I'm a bit unsure about putting in the fixings here for the AIO because the instructions are a little bit complicated. It's a bit different to ones I've installed before, so yeah, that'll be interesting. But what we'll do first is get this off and get the mounting for the AIO installed. So this plate was underneath the motherboard. Although we're not going to be using it, it's a good idea to keep hold of this, so just stick it back in the motherboard box. So I'm using the Sahara Gaming EX360 series AIO liquid cooler. This is a brand new cooler, and I've been very lucky enough to be sent one and try one out before it goes on sort of release to the general public. So I'm a bit of a guinea pig really. What could possibly go wrong? So yeah, I'm just going to follow the instructions, which I'm going to be honest aren't the best, and see if we can work it all out together. So we have got an AMD processor, so I've got to go through these instructions and get the mounting bracket installed. So let me do that. So it's got to have this little gasket. And then this goes on the underside of the motherboard. Like so. And then we've got these bolts that go through here. Then we need these hexagonal nuts. It calls these gaskets. That to my mind is a washer. It's not entirely clear, but you've got a big end and a little end, and you need to put the big end down towards the motherboard. Right, I can spin this around so you can see it a bit better now. As ever with these things, don't go too crazy tight. It needs to be sort of hand tight. You don't want to destroy anything. And there we go, that's it in place. So now we need to get the processor in, so let's do that. So to get the processor in, we need to lift that lever there, and then we grab our processor. So if you look, the processor is made up of lots of different gold pins. These are very delicate. Treat them with care and love. Now you'll notice on each corner it's sort of angled. This corner here is square. So you've got to put the square to the square down on the motherboard. So there we go, square to the square. Shouldn't need to press it down. It should just plop into place like that. And then you just pull the handle down and then hook it over. So that is the processor installed. We do have some stuff to go on the CPU cooler, some extra brackets and stuff, but that can probably wait till it's in the case. Now next we need to install the memory. So the memory goes in these slots here. It's important to know which slots the memory goes in depending on how full you're going to put them in. So on this motherboard, these two here, they're our first pair, and then these two here are our second pair. So if you're only going to be installing one channel of RAM, you'd put it in there. If you're going to be putting in two channels of RAM, you'd put one there and one there. And if you were going to be having 3 and 4 channels of RAM, the third would go in there and the fourth would go in here. Now you'll have to look in your manual to see which channel is what. They do vary, but generally it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And to put the RAM in, quite easy. All you do is push it down with the clip open and then give it a push on either side and it will just clip down. So I've got 64 gig of Corsair Vengeance DDR4 RAM. Obviously, you know, you can choose how much you have, but this is the motherboard maxed out on the memory stakes now. You can get RGB RAM if you want it. I think I'm just sticking with the normal RAM for now because there's going to be a lot of RGB in this case. So there we go, that is all the RAM nicely in position. What next? Okay, so now it is time to install this. And this is the M.2 drive. So this is a gig's worth of storage, all in this tiny, tiny little package. So I'm going to install that here. So it just pops in like that, and then you screw it in down here. Done. So that's pretty much all the components installed that we can do now. So it's fixed into the case with 9 screws. There, and there, and there, and there. It's not too difficult. The only difficult bit is right here. And this is the front panel connectors, and these are a pain. Now basically this controls like the power button, the reset button, sometimes the hard drive LED, and it's a bit of a nightmare getting the plugs into it because they're so tiny and fiddly, and especially on this where the screen printing is a very dark grey and the board is sort of almost black, it's very hard to see what the pins are. So this is where you need to make sure you've got your motherboard manual handy with the pinouts of this, and even then it is still a bit of a ball ache, especially when it comes to plugging in the LEDs, because they've got a positive and minus and they have to be round the right way or else they won't work. So yeah, that's the probably only tricky bit to come. The rest of it is pretty straightforward. And what is good about this motherboard is it's got an inbuilt IO shield. Sometimes this bit comes separate and you have to put it into the case and then juggle the motherboard in and make sure it goes through each hole, but because it's inbuilt, it makes life a lot easier. So yeah, that's going to make things a bit more straightforward. So yeah, let's switch up some camera angles and get the case out. So it's time to get the motherboard installed, and as you can see, this case has got the standoffs for it already there, so that's helpful. So we've got to get it in position and then screw it down. So now we come to the bit I really don't like, doing the system panel connectors. So you'll probably have a page in your motherboard manual, just like this, and it shows you where each of the connectors goes. So yeah, I've got to use this and plug them all in. So let's do that. So what have we got? We've got the power switch, got reset switch, power LED, minus and positive, and a hard drive LED. Okay. Well, let's do the power LED, positive and minus. And then next to that, we've got the power switch. And we don't have a speaker, so then we've got to move behind and do the hard drive LED. There's no good camera angles for this, unfortunately. Try my best. And then next is the reset switch. Perfect. We're done. So other things we've got to connect. Got a USB connector, and that plugs in down here. We've got the HD audio, and that goes in here. And then finally we've got this connector, and that's our USB 3 ports that are on the front, and that goes in there. So that is the bulk of the connectors sorted. I need to sort out the cable management, but I'll probably do that nearer the end. Now normally we'd be thinking about plugging in the fans, but because we're using this AIO and it's got its own fan controller, we don't need to do that. So I think our next job will be to put the power supply in. So let's do that. So the next thing to install is this, and this is our PSU, or power supply unit. And I've opted for the NZXT C750, and it is a modular power supply. So basically you only plug in the power cables that you need. So in this case we need the motherboard, the CPU, one peripheral and SATA, one PCIe. The PCIe, we don't need a second CPU, but this can run 2 CPUs. So yeah, basically the good thing about this is you only put in the cables that you need, and so that makes cable management a bit easier. Now the power supply traditionally has to have the fan to the bottom. and it just slides into here. And then you just need to screw it in. There we go, so that's the power supply in. Now all we need to do is plug our cables in. Now depending on your case, you might need to have done this bit first. Because there's a lot of room to work with in this case, we can do it as a secondary thing, but yeah, just it really depends on the case, how it pans out. So we've got the power cables all plugged in and roughly through the case where we want them. This is the power supply for the graphics card. I won't put that in yet, largely because it's going to go up there and I'm not sure how much clearance the cooler needs to go in, so I'm just going to leave this unplugged for now and the graphics card out. So first up we can plug in this one, which is the motherboard connector, and that goes here. That clips into position. And then up here, this is the power supply for the CPU. Lovely. So I think the next job is to move up to the top here and get the radiator set up. But I think I'm going to have to move the case and free up some space on the desk so I can get the fans all installed. We need to get the fans for the cooler mounted onto the radiator, so it's a pretty straightforward job. 12 screws, and you need to have the wires coming out this way, because if you have them coming out the other way, then they'll be going into the case, but this way, when the radiator's up in the case, the cables will be easier to cable manage. So yeah, I'm just going to whiz through these. I'll speed it up for you because, you know, it's a bit boring to watch 12 screws being screwed in. So back in a second. There we go, that's them all screwed in. Pretty straightforward. Now we've got to get it into the case. Okay, so now we need to get this radiator into the case. And it's going up here. So you need about 30 hands at this point because you've got to thread the cables through, and you've also got to hold the radiator up in position. So let's give it a go. I am quite enjoying building in this case. It's got plenty of room and it's making quite a nice clean build. Perfect. Right, so now we've got to get it in position and screw it in. Yeah, so I'm kind of glad I didn't put the top exhaust fan in because it fouls where the radiator is. So good idea to just get a handful of screws in, and then you can sort of adjust the position as you go. As ever, don't over tighten the screws. Just hand tighten, a little twist extra is about right. Perfect. So now it's time to get the cooler on, and we need to apply a bit of thermal paste. I don't go too crazy. The perfect amount of thermal paste. That's where you need Steve from Tronics fix. That should do. Right, now it's time to get the cooler on. And we need to get this gasket in position. It slides on like that. And then we need to take this off, the cold plate, and then get this in position. So we have to put metal washers on each bit. And then we've got these to put on. So I would probably work from corner to corner. And then just sort of move around, just tightening each one up in turn. That is the Sahara Gaming EX360 all installed. It's just a case of sorting out the power to it now. So the instructions tell me that this connector needs to go to the system fan connector on the motherboard. And this connector here, which is like a sort of 6-pin proprietary connector, needs to go in the hub that they've supplied. This is the hub that Sahara Gaming give you. And so it has a power feed from a SATA connection there, and all their fans. This provides the RGB, I think, and there's a data cable that goes to the RGB connector on your motherboard. And also I think it goes to a fan connector as well. I need to double check. And there's a button there for a reset switch, which is on the top of the case. But yeah, this controls 10 fans, I think. All these fans have a daisy chain connector, and they plug into the CPU fan pins on the motherboard. It's a bit of a strange setup, I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit confused by it all. I don't know how I feel about this sort of proprietary gubbins, but I guess we've just got to give it a go and see. So yeah, I'm going to try and do this now. Has got to go to the system fan. I mean, we don't really have a system fan, we've got a chassis fan. So I'm going to put that there. And this 6-pin proprietary one goes into the fan hub. Okay, next job is to install the graphics card. So we need to get out 2 of the expansion plates because it uses 2 spaces. And then you just need to open that pin down so it's ready to accept the card. This is a RTX 2070 Super, and it just slots into place. Perfect. And then you just put the screws in that you just took out. And it needs some additional power. And that's in. We'll just tidy up the cables in a second. Okay, so this cable comes with the EX360, and this provides the power to the fans. So you've got one connector here that goes onto the CPU fan connector on the motherboard, and then these 3 connectors plug onto the fan, so that's what makes them spin. And the 6-pin connectors that are on them supply the RGB. Talking about the RGB is a bit of a minefield when it comes to different connectors. So I've had to get this converter, which turns the Aura Sync supplied from the motherboard into Aura Sync that the control box for the Sahara fans understands. I'll put a link to all of this in the description, but yeah, this is going to plug into the motherboard and a SATA power connection, and then the Sahara fan connector box will plug into here. It's a bit of a faff, so a bit more wires, but it should all work and sync up nicely, hopefully. So yeah, this bit needs to go on the motherboard, and then the rest of it goes in the back of the case. So the data connector to the Sahara fan interface needs a PWM connection. So I'm plugging that into one of the spare fan sockets on the bottom of the motherboard. Should have thought about that sooner, but never mind, that's what happens. So this build has been going really well, up until the point I realised I put the fans on the radiator the wrong way around. So yeah, apologies for that if you're following along, but I've had to unscrew them all and turn them the other way around, and now they are exhausting rather than pulling in air. This is exhausting. So it's time to power on for the first time. Let's try it. Oh, the logo's glowing. Let's press the power button. Oh, look at that. There we go. You're gonna beep. Yep. Excellent. I think the temperature of the CPU should appear on the screen in a second. There we go. Perfect. So aside from getting the fans the wrong way around, done all right there. And there's a lot of cool air flowing through the system. You can really feel it, even standing back here. So anyway, let's get the side back on and finish up. Well, there you go. That's the PC finished, and it's recording this piece right now, and it seems to be doing brilliantly. I really like the Sahara gaming cooler. That's worked really nicely, and it's not too loud. Can't hear it, can you? And I quite like the little remote that comes with it. So you can turn on the fan and turn on or off the RGB as well. And so, you know, there's no faffing around in software to do it. You can just click a button and it's off, which is really simple. Now, if you do want to try out the Sahara Gaming EX360 cooler for yourself, and you want to get £20 off the £129 retail price, then you can do that. Just enter code KIPHAKES20 at the checkout on the link below. I'll put that on the screen there. You get £20 off as a kiphakes.tv viewer, which is very kind of Sahara. There were bits that I missed out. I didn't show the full RGB hookup and all the cable tidying and stuff like that. There are better videos showing you how to tidy your cable management. And also I didn't cover things like installing Windows, because I already had Windows installed on the hard drive that I put in. But again, there are videos out there that show you how to install an operating system. So hopefully, with my video and several others, you'll have yourself covered. But I think I've shown you the basics at least, and pushed you in the right direction. And as you'd have noticed, I have put all the details in the description of all the components I've used. So if you want to use the same ones, then you can. All the details are there. So yeah, if you like to see my videos a little bit earlier than anyone else, then please do join the channel. There's a button for it down there. And if this has been any way useful to you, then please do give it a thumbs up. If it hasn't, you can give it a thumbs down, that's fine, I won't be offended. But that's it from me now. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll be back soon for some more vlogging fun. See ya!